I'm thankful for your leaders to select the readings today, because all the readings today seem to focus on the concept of faith and fear. And so I guess this was prepared for me by divine intervention. So thank you so much. Brief introduction as far as my about foundation and my evolution to where I am today. I was born in Haiti, and in 1973, my father and my mother brought me to New York to join them. And at 13 years old, in June, in the following September, I started high school in New York, not really speaking English. So I had to not only learn a new culture as a teenager, but learn a new language, a new educational system. And so all those were challenges that I faced early on in this new world, in this new environment. And that's part also why I'm choosing also this topic today of fear and faith, and that intersection and nuances that exist when one experiences fear. How do we manage it healthily, right? And successfully completed high school in 4 years, which my wife always say, how did you start high school the same time that I did, not speaking English, being in a new country, new culture, new language, and you graduated in 4 years just like I did, and was able to transition to undergraduate work at the City University in New York. And 4 years later, went to Mexico to study medicine, when the policies and the influences of international politics and norms and nomenclature prevented me from practicing in the United States. I simply moved on and started my career working as a public servant, in a sense, in a nonprofit, serving students in high schools and colleges and universities. And it's the work that I've done since August 1983 to now. So I'm thankful for the opportunity today to serve, to be of service to you as a community. My experience of living 3 different countries within the first 22 years of my life was amazing. Having to learn 3 languages were challenges that I was able to face and successfully conquered. And so what that gave me a level of confidence, and I'm going to go to my meaning of the word confidence for you later. It helped me to understand that I can take on any challenge. I have the capacity, the ability to navigate and manage myself. Challenges, opportunities for us to grow. Without challenges, we do not grow. And this is who I am. This is who is with you this afternoon. By the way, as I go, do not let me move forward. If something comes up for you that kind of brings something up where you need me for me to go deeper, you want to reflect, simply raise your hand, or however the process you use in your community to draw attention that you want to speak. Katerina, help me, let me know if somebody has a question or want me to pause. I will happily do so.
We'll do it there. Thank you.
So one of the things I want to start is the basic definition and foundation of what fear is, right? And we know fear, all of us have experienced fear, but let's go to Webster's definition, right? As a noun, fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief, that's a key word here, the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or threat. As a verb, slightly different. Fear is being afraid of someone or something that, again, you believe or understand to be dangerous, painful, or threatening. Right? Now, in all reality, right, fear is an emotion. It's learned. And part of that learning fear is also the ability to unlearn fear. And this is why that expression on top may not be well received by some of you, but it's a reality. Fear is the false evidence appearing real. I'll go that over. Fear, F-E-A-R, is the false evidence appearing real. Now, clearly, right, there are things we experience in life that will draw us to become afraid. And that can be very real and very dramatic for us, right? Yet, it is an emotion that we learn. Just like everything we learn, there's a potential for us to unlearn or manage the fear that is being experienced. And by the way, sometimes the experience doesn't have to be our own experience. It could be somebody else's experience that draws us to become afraid. So for example, my fear of snake, I've never been bitten by a snake. All I know is snakes have the capacity with their fangs to bite you. And all depends on the kind of snake they are, that bite can be deadly. So yours truly have a very natural, organic fear for snakes. And I've never been faced by a snake. I've never been bitten by a snake, but it's a fear that I have, right? And so if I was walking down the street, someone who I know was carrying a snake around their neck, like some people do, and they say, well, you trust me, you know me, you can come and touch that snake. Trust and believe, I will not touch that snake because that fear is so powerful that I will not touch that snake, right? So that's the first part of it. It is very real and it's very transparent. Dogs, for example. I grew up with a dog, although we've had cats all out my adult life, but you may have someone in your community who may have been bitten by a dog. And so therefore, any dog that they see, they're like, I'm staying away because I know the experience. Similarly, there are things that fear can be very real for us and can be very positive for us. My youngest son, when he was, I think, 2 years old, he was with his grandfather in the backyard doing a barbecue. And my grandfather, his grandfather turned away for a second and he touched the fire pit. Guess what? He got burned. So we didn't have to tell him to be afraid of fire. He has learned that I cannot touch fire. So some fear are positive, are needed, are a reminder of what we can or cannot do, what we should or should not do. I call that a healthy respect for something that is dangerous. Right? So I want to make sure that I create the differences between real fear, fear that serves us, and I call it caution we should have as we navigate our world, our environment, right? Nonetheless, there are fear that are healthy, there are fear that are unhealthy. We have to understand the difference, right? There are times we create the fear. We create the fear. The fear is in our mind, right? And so at those times, we have to understand why I'm afraid of X, why I'm afraid of this. Is this a worthy fear for me to carry through my life? Does it serve me? And does it somewhat hinder me from reaching my full potential as a human being in this world, right? For example, there are people who are afraid of flying. Now, again, nowadays more than ever, and I'm talking about this now in March 2025, we have some very real experiences that may make anyone, including us truly, I've flown very, very frequent. In fact, I think I've flown every month this year already. And yet, now it is because of what I transpired recently, I'm just a little afraid every single time I'm getting into that flight. But I have to navigate and manage that fear, right? Because I know there are many things we do in life that have some risk involved. The idea is then how do we still follow through, knowing that that fear is simply something that is innate to me, and it doesn't have to be natural. What I'm afraid of doesn't have to happen, right? And so when I think of the role we play as an elder, as a parent, as a trusted mentor, as a leader, we sometimes do things that create fear in others, or our fear can simply be translated to fear for others. How then do we prevent passing on the fear that we have to other people unknowingly, unintentionally, right? Because here's the idea is, whether we believe it to be fact or not, if it's in our mind that it's a fear, it is 100% real. But here's the bottom line. There is no illusion greater than fear. Let me say it again. There is no illusion greater than fear. And so is fear is real, perceive or not, and is fear is such a powerful force. Well, what do we do with it? Right? That's the question I'm here to face with you this afternoon. We have to manage it. We have to manage. Just like everything in life we manage, we have to manage it. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to pause with that quote, Katerina, to see if people want me to go deeper. I'll read the quote as you can see it in front of you. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave individual is not the one who does not feel afraid, but the one who conquers that fear. And I know you read a couple of Bible verses that has fear attached to it. And this is a spiritual environment, right? There's a lot of things that we do that requires us to be courageous. The very faith that you have requires you to be courageous. The very life that we lead, that we live, requires us to be courageous. Catherine and I have a shared experience. Our home nations are under attack in different ways, politically, violently. And so when we step out, for Karina to say, I'm Ukrainian, that may require some courage in some environment she enters. If I have to walk into a place, I say, I'm a proud Haitian American, right? I have to carry the courage of not being targeted by being, oh, poor you from this third world impoverished, quote unquote, dangerous country, right? Those may seem trivial for many people, but for us, it takes real courage to still be very proud of who we are and where we came from and where we were born, where our parents are from. So this level of courage is critical for us to face whatever fear that may be hindering us from reaching our full potential as a human being, right? And one of the ways that I talk about managing fear is the concept of transforming fear into faith. Faith, true faith, has the ultimate power to help all of us manage and navigate and face our fear. Because if we do not face our fear, it is hard for us to be our authentic self. Because every one of us is authentically and powerfully created by the greater power. And when we do not live our authentic self, when we do not live in the power that we've been ordained by the greater one, we are not in our rhythm. We are not being our true selves. Let me pause. I just said a whole lot in the past 5 to 7 minutes or more. Are there any thoughts, any reaction that is coming to you at this point? I want to hear from you.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, but I almost want to wait to hear hear the whole thing.
Okay. All right. So if there's no thoughts yet, I will continue. Katerina, you tell me.
I see Roxanne raised her hand.
Okay.
Roxanne, do you want to say something briefly?
Yeah, I'll be brief. But all of this is just bringing up the story of Moses and the bronze serpent. So that's where this is taking me to. Thank you.
You want to say more about that, please, Ms. Perry?
Well, I feel like since we're coming upon Easter as well, I think that when we gaze upon the crucified Christ, that we're confronting everything that causes us to suffer. And I think that's a really important thing for us to do. And I know a lot of people have difficulty with the crucified Christ, but I think it's important. So that's all I have to say.
No, thank you so much. And I think all of us have our own trial and tribulation that we face in this world that that can help us to appreciate the Lenten season. The Lenten season ends with Palm Sunday, and all of us, whatever faith you are, celebrating one way or another the overcoming of the death, right? And that is courage. That is courage. Even the courage to reflect upon, as the leader of the community spoke when we started, where are we lacking? Where do we want to challenge ourselves to evolve and grow? It's the courage to do that self-analysis, to do that self-reflection, and knowing this is where I need further growth. This is where I need to have greater faith in order to evolve into the person that I'm deemed to be, right? And so thank you for making the connection between this conversation and the season we are in now, right? By the way, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and my mother thought I was going to be a priest until I was 16 years old. So there's a little ministry in me to some extent as I do this as a layperson this afternoon. But thank you so much for the connection to this conversation. Is there anyone else? Katerina, I will continue and see how it evolves.
I think folks are holding on to their questions until the end. Please continue, Willair.
Thank you. So the question that I sent to Katerina as a central part of this for everyone is, what is the long-term impact, cost, and outcome of living and being in fear? Fear is one of the most traumatic things we experience. And usually we experience it in silence. And I think because of the world we lived in, and especially our current society, we do not become vulnerable to other people when we are in a place of fear, when we are stressed, when we are even maybe in a toxic environment, in a toxic relationship, in a toxic place of work, in a toxic community. We find ourselves somehow, we must be an island to ourselves, and we do not share with another person. So we live in that fear. And fear and stress, as we know, can relate to physical illness. Fear takes us to mental illness. Fear takes us to being emotionally unhealthy. And when we are in that state of not being physically, mentally, emotionally well, we cannot truly be fully ourselves, be of service to ourselves, and be of service to others. And if that's one thing I remember as human beings, we have to be fully healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to truly be of service as we are ordained to be. So therefore, not managing any kind of fear, especially certain fear, is really hindering us from living a full life. And so the next quote is important. One of the happiest moments in life is when you find the courage to let go of what you cannot change. Sometimes the fear we face is fear of something that's not in our control. It's fear of something that may never, never confront us, but yet it's a real fear. I was told that there are a couple of challenges we have in life. There are things that are in our controls. There are things that may be in our influence, and there are things that are totally out of our control. How much time do we really spend in reflection to think of this one challenge, this one life situation, this circumstance? How much of it is me? How much of it can I influence? And how much of it is not in my control? And how do I let go? Right? And I do not know what the passage is. I'm not good with my calling the book in the Bible in the verse, but the concept of let go and let God, right? And I think as human beings, sometimes we think we need to be in control of everything in our environment. That need for control, that need for power lead us to being afraid, to being out of control, to being out of alignment. So that courage to understand that there are things I simply cannot change. and then we get to faith. One of the things that I learned, we've been to many house of worship, different denomination, but there was this individual that my wife and I met when we first got to Washington, D.C. One of the pieces he used in a sermon, I remember so clearly, is the definition of confident. Confident. And confident is a loaded word. 1 second, I'm losing my PowerPoint. 1 second, please. Confident. Confident that I'm referring to is the word con, C-O-N, and fidant or fide. Anybody speak Spanish in the community this afternoon? Anybody speak Spanish? You speak some Spanish, Rich? What does the word con mean in English? Con is a Spanish word. What does it mean in English?
With.
And we are in a spiritual environment, when you hear the word fidens, fide, what does it mean?
Is that fidelity?
Yes, faith.
Faith.
So confidence is being with faith. So as we face any circumstance in life, any life challenges, if we are confident, we have the ability to overcome because we have the faith, we have the capacity to not only manage what is in front of us, but to be successful in whatever endeavor that we are faced with. And so the idea of being confident is the challenges that a lot of us face. We do not have enough confidence in ourselves and our ability to manage and navigate what, let me dare say, God presents us as an opportunity to grow. Sometimes the challenges that we face is simply an opportunity to grow. And if we do not face that challenge or that opportunity with confidence, we do not experience the growth that is potentially expecting us as we face that challenge or that opportunity. Is that making sense? Let me hear from you. Is that making sense to you?
I see some heads nodding, Willair.
Should I pause here for some question or thought you might have?
Let me see if folks have questions.
Any thoughts and questions that you may have?
I think we can keep going, Willair. I'm
We'll
sure.
keep going, okay? And so what I've just done is fix the problem that I had with my PowerPoint by simply doing a cut and paste, and we just keep moving, right? That's what we do, right? There you go. So what I want us to remember is every single one of us have it within us, the ability to be courageous, the ability to be courageous, right? And so it is not just because the unlearning of fear is easy, right? And so even the idea that having the will to overcome the impact of fear itself may be hard for some, right? But again, when we are confident, right? When we are confident, it is all that you need. And part of it also is, remember, you are more than enough. Part of the reason why we're not so confident, we always question ourselves. We question our ability, we question our knowledge, we question our experience, we question our lived experience that prepares us for what's to come. Have you heard the concept of yesterday is history, today is the present, and why is the present is a gift? It is a gift that prepares us for what we have to face tomorrow. So the idea is we are more than enough, and we are more than worthy. So again, the idea of being confident is having the faith in yourself, the capacity to change fear to faith and overcome any barrier that you may be faced with, any challenge that will be in front of you, so that you can take full advantage of the opportunity you've been granted to evolve. Again, I want us to keep thinking about what's stopping me today from being my higher level being self. What are the fears? What are the challenges that I'm afraid to face, that I find myself challenged to manage, that's getting in my way? What do I need to do to step up and know that I'm confident enough, that I'm able enough, I'm more than enough, and I'm more than worthy to live a full life? The fact that you believe there's a greater power who brought you into this world, you are ordained to live a full life. What's getting in the way? What's getting in the way? Pause. Thoughts, reaction.
Thank you, Willair. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's open it up to questions and reflections from the community now.
Yeah, well, I'll kick it off just with a couple observations. First of all, thank you very much, and just the pace of your speaking and your wisdom, I have to say, it comes through. So I appreciate that. Uh, and as you were speaking, I was thinking, one of the things the angels are always telling people in the Bible is, be not afraid, fear not. We're constantly in that state of fear. But 2 points that I just want to raise and ask you questions about based on your presentation. One is that I do feel like our culture right now is living in fear. And I especially experience this among younger people who have told me like they don't share anything that they believe in school. They don't share things even among friends. They're very careful because they've grown up in a culture that it's really different that they like, if you say the wrong thing, you could be completely bullied like online and have your address put out and your job at risk. So there's we had bullies, right, when I grew up, but not like hundreds of trolls online who could come after if you said the wrong thing. So I think we are in a state of great fear. People are not being very honest for fear of what could happen. Just sort of keep your head down. So I think you've captured the times that we're in for a variety of reasons. People are afraid to say what they think. The point that the one thing is that you were talking about the edge that people live up to, sort of what can you control and what can't you control. And I would say that most of the people who come to me as a pastor who are living in fear are fearing things that are outside of their control. But when I suggest that to them, they say, well, that's a cop out on your part because you're not engaging in that, like you're not engaging in changing the world. You're not, and so what about prayer? What about social justice activism? Like you're saying these things are out of my control, but I don't want to. I don't want to agree with you on that because that's kind of compromising. It's selling out. It's not giving in. So I was just curious. We can't control everything, but it is a little blurry. You have the ability to pray. You do have the responsibility to be active in the world for change. So how do you in your life find that line that's okay, this is outside of my control? Because you've thrown yourself into complicated situations, looking at your biography where you've had to go where other people thought they had no control, you stepped up. So where do you see that line of what what am I responsible to be engaged in and be worried about? And when do I just say, well, I can't change it, so I just might as well let it go and not read the news or not worry about it. How would you respond to that?
Thank you for that question. I faced questions like that most of my career, from 1983 to 2022, 23, when I retired, even now when I'm coaching leaders. I'm coaching leaders from ATF. I'm coaching leaders that are working for the federal and local government. And I always say, it's a question one have to answer for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
because every situation is uniquely different. I always say, I'm looking at proximity to potential risk factor, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and also my very existence in the world, in a sense that for example, I dare speak politically. I'm a very political person, but I understand fully I'm in a world now, your First Amendment rights is not real. I understand that there are people that are mentally unstable, and it's not that I'm not holding them responsible or accountable for their action, but yet their action have dire consequences. So every one of us, from that 16-year-old who's still feeling the world is letting me down, I need to let people know the world is letting me down. There's a gentleman who was arrested at the campus of Columbia University simply because he was part of a protest. So there's this very much attack on our civility and our ability to speak our words, right? And so I would say again, it's a responsibility that each one of us must take on. And hopefully we have enough of a community around us who's gonna give us the ability to reflect, to think, and make the right decision. I always say there's doing the right things and there's doing things right. I always say there's doing the right thing by your conscience, so that you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I've made a decision that I can live with. Which again, there are always risks attached. My father was a refugee when he left Haiti to come to the United States. For a year, my mother thought he was killed because he was doing something he believed in. So again, everything we do in life have a certain level of risk. How do we, quote unquote, assess and mitigate the risk so that we can still be fully available to continue to serve?
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. And I'm reminded by something else you said today, which is that through our faith, we should have the courage to stand up for what we believe in with the grace of God, knowing that to be inauthentic is really the worst way we can live our lives. So we have to speak truth when we see it. So thank you.
And the concept of it was a joke a little while ago, speak truth to power. But right now, there's a need for you, people that would drown out your noise, to be able to speak the truth to power the best way you can do it and as safe as possible for you. And that's it, because I cannot say anything to someone and for somebody at risk. I dare not do that. So I always leave it to the person and look at their own conscience. What can you live or can't live with? And what are the risk factor that you are stepping into doing whatever you're doing?
Thank you.
No.
Pastor Glenn, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I'm reminded of our failures from time to time, and that we begin our worship service each week with a prayer of confession. And to be able to confess to one another, admit and confess to God. There are ways where I have not been able to do this. For a number of years, actually 20 or 30 years now, I've invited people to engage in Christian ministry in a variety of ways. And I got a very common phrase back when someone wanted to say no. They would say, "That's outside my comfort zone." Okay, so what my experience was that's a place where if I was asked to speak or I was asked to do something that I had not done before, I would become afraid. And yet I was able most of the time, I think, to address that and find out a way to do this. After having done it once, I was less afraid or more free to engage. And so I would encourage people to do the thing that frightened them or made them feel like maybe they weren't capable of it and so forth. Because the miraculous thing that takes place is if we do something that's outside our comfort zone and we find out that God helped us and we're comforted in that experience, the miraculous thing happens is that our comfort zone becomes larger. We live an enlarged life, God's grace, and there's a happiness, there's that sense of, wow, I actually did that. And if I'm courageous now in doing something small, if I'm courageous now in doing something I've never done before, perhaps I may be courageous in doing more later on. So, yeah, just that thought.
Thank you. What you're talking about, sir, is the concept of building the courage muscle. Everything we do is a muscle. The more you practice, the more you use it, the stronger the muscle actually gets. And so in Katerina, I may be saying this in closing. I don't know if there are any more thoughts. Two things that came to mind where both you and Rich just spoke. One is saying no is not saying never. Saying no is I may not be ready right now to step into that role or to take that leap. That's one. Two, there are also ways to navigate in what we say. For example, Katerina knows this. I've been doing DEI work since I was working in Seattle back in the late 90s. But we never called it DEI. We called it looking at what's best for society, what's best for a community. And so even 4 or 5 years ago, I was telling people, let's stop calling the work we do about social justice DEI, because we can still talk about what is right, what is human, quote unquote, right, what is right as a being responsible for this world. We are steward of this world. But so once you start giving it names and titles that people can attack, then you open yourself to be attacked. So there's even ways there's nuanced ways to even navigate the fear, the attack, sometimes that may come to you when you take certain steps. So all those are things that I've learned along the way to still do the work that I do and still feel somewhat not comfortable, not safe, but comfortable in doing it, knowing that at the end of the day, I'll be just fine.
Well, I really appreciate those words of wisdom, and I think you leave us with a really good challenge that you had in your message today, which is think about whatever is causing you fear in your life right now and ask God, what do I need to grow from this? Like, what is the growing edge? What am I afraid of, and how do I step into it? Because as you said, we don't grow spiritually unless we go through challenges. So whatever that fear is probably keeping us from the challenge that's holding back our spiritual development. So I really, really appreciate your thoughts today and the answers to these questions. Thank you so much for being with us today and
Thank
for your
you.
wisdom,
Thank
all
you
the
for
work.
having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Willair.